activities shall enter into the darkest region of ignorance. Worse still are those engaged in the culture of so-called knowledge. So we are just entering part 3 of Isopanisad. Part 3 is mantras 9 to 14. And the subject matter in a general sense is the absolute and the relative. Absolute means the transcendental, and the relative means the material. And there are 2 sections here. In the first section, which we're going to go through now and tomorrow night, verses 9, 10, and 11, we're going to try to understand the absolute and the relative in terms of knowledge. And then in mantras 12 to 14, anyway, we'll tell you about that when we get there. So, okay, now this verse then we're discussing about the absolute and the relative, the transcendental and the material in terms of knowledge. Let me just read the verse, the translation of the verse again. Those who engage in the culture of nescient activities shall enter into the darkest region of ignorance. Worse still are those engaged in the culture of so-called knowledge. So you understand the basic point. If someone is just ignorant, like a foolish, uneducated person, then and they just dive into material life, then they're going to go down into the darkest region of ignorance, lower planets, lower species. But those who are engaged in the culture of so-called knowledge are even worse. So-called knowledge means wrong knowledge. They're cultivating wrong knowledge, and in many cases they're trying to teach wrong knowledge, and they are misleading people. So they're cheating people. They may think they're teachers, but just as we said right at the beginning of the course, well, at least in English, right? In Russian, it doesn't work. But in English, teacher and cheater, you just exchange the position of the T and the CH, and teacher becomes cheater. So, okay, now let's get into it. So this mantra, Prabhupada says, is giving a comparison of vidya and avidya, which vidya means knowledge and avidya means ignorance. So Prabhupada explains that, of course, ignorance is dangerous, but knowledge is even more dangerous when it's mistaken or misguided. And Prabhupada makes the point in the purport that this mantra is more applicable now than at any time in previous history. And I tell you frankly, this mantra is more applicable right now in 2021 than it even was in 1970 when Srila Prabhupada made Sri Isopanisad. It's worse. Okay. So Prabhupada makes the point, modern civilization has advanced greatly in mass education, but the result is that people are more unhappy than before because the emphasis of the education is material advancement, and spiritual advancement is just totally neglected. So we go on to paragraph 2. So, in regard to vidya, or actual knowledge, the essence, or the sort of the foundation, as in one sense at least, let us say, has been explained in the first mantra. It's the Isopanisad system. This is the basis of knowledge. Knowledge in the sense of how to live in this world. That's the basis. That we must understand that the Lord is the owner and the controller of everything. Point one. And point two, that everyone has their quota, including you and me. And if anyone takes more than their quota, then it is inevitable that they are taking from the quota of someone else, and that other person will be disturbed, and therefore disturbance will spread. Yeah, a lot of disturbed people will be there, and they will disturb the people who have taken more than their quota. This is the thing. Yes. So the more, Prabhupada makes the point, the more we forget these points. Krishna's the owner and controller, and by his arrangement, everyone has their quota. The more we forget this, the more we're in the darkness of ignorance. And therefore, the modern civilization, which is based on this, technological knowledge, materialistic knowledge of how to increase your comfort, knowledge of how to increase your material enjoyment, that civilization is more dangerous than like an older civilization where people were just uneducated, they couldn't read, they couldn't write, all these types of things. So, okay, on we go to mantra 3 and mantra 3, paragraph 3. So there are the three main classes of people: karmis, jnanis, and yogis. And of them, the karmis are just into sense gratification. Prabhupada says 99% of them are just into sense gratification 99% of the time, or maybe 100%. So a lot of them are engaged like this, under the flags, Prabhupada says, of industrialization, economic development, altruism, political activism, and so on. And these things, unfortunately, directly or indirectly, they are based on sense gratification to the exclusion of the knowledge in the first mantra, the Isopanisad system. Everything's owned and controlled by the Lord, and therefore no one should take. Everything should be used in his service, and everyone should just take their quota. So now the fourth paragraph. So Prabhupada explains that according to Bhagavad Gita 7:15, people who are just engrossed in gross materialistic life, sense gratification, they're mudhas, they're just like asses. Yeah, let me just tell you the translation of that verse. It's talking about 4 types of non-devotees, but one of them is the mudha, who just works for sense gratification. So Krishna says, Bhagavad Gita 7:15, Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, who are lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me. Yes. So, So yeah, they're basically like asses, like donkeys. So anyway, so people who are worshipping avidya means materialistic knowledge, which is actually ignorance ultimately. So these people, foolish people, who are just interested in material development, Prabhupada says, they are doing more harm than good. Well, yeah, okay. So now here, actually, there's a little sort of change here, that the people in the current day society who are promoting just the materialistic education system, which is basically aimed at giving people qualification for getting good jobs to earn more money, to enjoy life more. So these people are worshipping ignorance, or in the name of knowledge. They call it knowledge, but it's ignorance. You know, there's a song of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's, which it's called Vidyara Vilase, my educational pastimes. And he says, yes, I went through the whole process of education, from beginning even up to into university level and high education. And I came out at the end and I understood I am no better than an ass. I am just now a big ass. Yeah, that's all. Right, so now, so these people then, these people are doing more harm than good through the promotion of material education. And Prabhupada now gives a very interesting example that the advancement of learning by a godless people is as dangerous as a valuable jewel on the hood of a cobra. Yes, a cobra with a jewel on the head, which looks very attractive. People think, oh, look at this. They may become fascinated and come close to the cobra. But that makes that cobra more dangerous than an ordinary cobra, which has just nothing on the head. So this is what the advancement of education on the material level is all about, actually. And even we get many devotees who don't understand this point clearly enough. I mean, of course, they're devotees who understand that we're getting some higher education just so we can make a living without having to work too hard, so we can be free to practice Krishna consciousness better. Yeah. The cultivation of a so-called higher education with that in mind, that's another thing. But just for itself, just to become qualified to earn well, get money, and enjoy, this is worse than being in ignorance. So Srila Prabhupada, so he gives the example of the cobra with the jewel on the head. Then he gives another example that the advancement of education by a godless people is compared to decorations on a dead body. You know, it happens, it's so common. Someone dies, and the family members for the funeral they dress that person up in the best suit so they look, smart. But it's a dead body. Glorification of a dead body. So, yeah. So it's very unfortunate. So Prabhupada, of course the aim of education should be self-realization, understanding the truth of life, and not just some concocted idea of the illusory situation. So Prabhupada concludes the paragraph, any education which does not lead to such realization must be considered avidya or nescience. And to culture such nescience means to go down to the darkest region of ignorance. And we have a special question here. It's based on a letter by Prabhupada to Brahmananda, dated November 25th, 1969, from London. November 25th, 1969, from London to Brahmananda. And there Prabhupada says, when a living entity becomes envious of Krishna, he is put into the darkest region of material existence. So, the question is, how is one put into the darkest region of material existence? And Prabhupada said, what did he say? By becoming envious of Krishna. And so we continue on. Let's see, to paragraph 5, which now refers to Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, verse 42, and also actually verse 45, plus chapter 7, verse 15, which we just read the translation of some minutes ago. And Prabhupada says that these foolish materialistic teachers, the foolish materialistic educators, teachers, they are known as Veda Vada Rata or Mayaya Parita Jnana. Mayaya Parita Jnana is from Bhagavad Gita, means one whose knowledge is stolen by illusion. And Veda Vada Rata, this is quoted in chapter 2, verse 42, that referring to people, men of small knowledge are very attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets. So it's this whole, the Veda Vada Rata, they're people who, they're using the Vedas, but their idea is to improve their material situation, go to higher planets or whatever, on the basis of Vedic knowledge. So now in this paragraph 5, then also in paragraph 6, and also paragraph 7, for 3 paragraphs, Prabhupada now focuses particularly on the Veda Vada Rata people, more than the Mayaya Parita Jnana. The Mayaya Parita Jnana people, they're more like materialistic Western philosophers, poets, writers, artists, people like that. But the Veda Vada Ratas are worse because they're teaching on the basis of the Vedas how to improve your material situation, which makes you go deeper into material life. So Prabhupada's focusing on them, and also atheistic demons. So there are 3, Veda Vada Rata, Mayaya Paritagyana, and demons. So Vedavada Rata and the atheistic demons, they have like Vedic backgrounds, but they're misleading people. So as Prabhupada explains in this paragraph, they pose themselves as being very learned in Vedic literature. Therefore, so many innocent people think, oh, we must listen to them because they're Vedic authorities, but they are not. They have no idea what the Vedas are about. Prabhupada refers to Bhagavad Gita 15:15, in which Krishna says the purpose of the Vedas is to know him. The Vedavada Rata people, Prabhupada says, they're not at all interested in the personality of Godhead. On the contrary, they're fascinated by such fruitive results as the attainment of heaven. And then in next paragraph 6, again, explaining the same point, that in mantra 1, we should accept what's said in the first mantra, which, we've already talked about a lot, how the Lord is proprietor, etc. The purpose of the Vedas is to awaken that consciousness, Krishna consciousness. And the same thing is presented in other scriptures, in other traditions. And then, so Prabhupada concludes this little paragraph. Thus, the ultimate purpose of all religions is to bring one back to Godhead, but not according to the Vedavada Rata people. So then, the 7th paragraph, Prabhupada continues the same theme, that these people don't understand, the Vedavada Rata people don't understand the goal of life is to go back to Godhead. They think it's to enjoy in higher planets or better material situations. And so they're encouraging our lust for material enjoyment. And it is our lust which causes our bondage in this world. So they promote people, some of their own people, as being big authorities in the Vedas. Innocent, foolish people become misled, and it's really very bad. It's very bad. Yeah. And so they're condemned here by the words Vidyayam Rata, those engaged in study of the Vedas, but they're not proper students. And Prabhupada concludes the paragraph. Such Vedavada Rata people search out meanings in every word of the Vedas to suit their own purposes. They do not know that the Vedic literature is a collection of extraordinary books that can be understood only through the chain of disciplic succession. And would you believe it, devotees? The next paragraph 8 is also talking about these people. Oh my gosh, so there are 4 paragraphs about the Vedavada Rata people. So Prabhupada begins the paragraph that we have to approach a bona fide spiritual master, not one of these Vedavada Rata people. And he refers to Mundaka Upanishad, which we already, going back at the beginning of the seminar, we also read this verse. Let's just read it here too. How to identify a bona fide spiritual master. Tad vijnanartam saguru me vabhikachet samitpani shrotriyam brahmanishtam. To learn transcendental subject matter, one must approach the spiritual master. In doing so, he should carry fuel to burn and sacrifice. In other words, he should be ready to sacrifice his life to take shelter and follow such a spiritual master. The symptom of such a spiritual master is that he's expert in understanding the Vedic conclusion, and therefore he constantly engages in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Prabhupada concludes the paragraph, thus the Vedavada Rata people, they progressed into the darkest region of ignorance by misinterpreting the Vedic literature. They fall even further into ignorance than those who have no knowledge of the Vedas at all. And then the last paragraph 9 is about the Mayaya Paritagyana people, those whose knowledge has been stolen by illusion. And here Prabhupada's talking about a particular version of the Mayaya Paritagyana. If we read in Bhagavad Gita 7:15 in the purport there, Prabhupada gives a broader explanation of what are these people. But here Prabhupada says that these Mayaya Paritagyana people are self-made gods. They think they are God. There's no need to worship any god, any other god. They'll worship an ordinary man if he's rich, but never worship Krishna. They think, so they think that they think that God is an illusion. We're all God, but now we're in illusion. So that means the illusion is stronger than God. They don't consider, they don't understand. God is all powerful, he can't be caught in illusion. So Prabhupada concludes the